Welcome to Stellar Sisters, the podcast where cosmic wisdom meets soul-enriching conversation.
We explore astrology, human design, and the unique blueprint of your soul, helping you understand yourself on a deeper level.
Consider this your permission slip to embrace the magic of being authentically you.
Let's begin. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Stellar Sisters podcast. We're your hosts, Chanel and Sydney. And today we are welcoming a very special guest, Kelly Brown, to the show. Kelly is an artist, an energy practitioner, and a lifelong seeker of the deeper mysteries of life. She grew up in Pittsburgh and she spent 15 years living in France, where her artistic voice continued to unfold and evolve. And she eventually returned to Pittsburgh. She created Inner Light. It's a space devoted to art, energy work, and practices that help people reconnect with their own inner wisdom. Through her work with Qigong, Reiki, and sacred geometry, Kelly explores the unseen forces that shape both creativity and healing. Movement has always been a part of her language. She started dancing at 3 years old, and she even brought Zumba to the south of France. And today she often says that when she paints, she's really dancing with color. And her art carries that sense of motion, intuition, and wonder. She recently moved to Florida, where she's enjoying the sunshine and continuing to share her art, her teachings, and her deep curiosity about the beauty and mystery of life. And I also want to mention that she's my aunt, and I even lived with her for a couple months when she was in France. And Chanel even visited while we were in France. So that's a fun part of our story. And we all received our Reiki masters together. So that's also fun to note. And for anyone listening who loves to know the astrological and human design details like Chanel and I, Kelly is a Pisces sun, a Capricorn moon, and a Capricorn rising. And in human design, she's a 4-1 emotional generator. And remember that 4-1 profile is that really rare profile. Only about 1% of people have that. And her being a 4 line and a generator, it just gives this warm, cozy energy that you'll feel from her today. And so we are so excited to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, ladies.
Yes. And can you start by just telling everybody a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your story, your journey?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me. Thank you for welcoming me as one of your first guests. And I just want to say that I have had the opportunity to have readings from both of you magnificent women. And both times I was absolutely floored by the information you gave me. So a true testament to what you two are doing. So thank you very much. As Sydney mentioned, I am definitely a lifelong explorer. I think my earliest memory is probably around 5 years old, where I was the youngest of a family of 6, and I had an argument, like there was often an argument in our household, and I remember going outside and just looking up to the sky and saying, God, there has to be more to life than this. So I was really young when I started to ask real big questions, right?
Wow.
Yes. And then my journey as a little kid was really about people. I was fascinated by people because I just thought that people had knowledge that I was seeking. So whether it was children, friends, neighbors, old people, my parents, friends of my parents, I just was a little social butterfly trying to squeeze any ounce of hidden knowledge or something that thought that I was missing from these people. And I would flip around and just go where I thought the excitement was or where I could find a piece that was missing. And then I had the loss of a father. And then in my teen years, I became a born again Christian and started down that route because I came from a very Christian household, a Presbyterian household. And I was very thankful. I was very deeply embedded in the Bible at that time and seeking answers through scripture. And then I started asking some questions that just didn't sit right with me. And I went to college. And in college, I had one particular professor that really led me kind of under his wing. And I think he knew things that I didn't know for sure. But at the end of my scolarity, he signed me up, or I guess I should say, recommended me for this honors, academic honors, which was a Phi Kappa Phi. And it wasn't until just a few years ago did I actually start to study what those Greek letters actually meant. And it came in like a ton of bricks. I realized that those three symbols, those three Greek letters, held very deep information for me. But the Phi Kappa Phi are people who are passionate about learning. I'll just leave it there without going into what those are. But anyway, in my 20s, I then started down a route that took me to beginning to study energy in a very unusual way. It was working with Qigong, but most people that work with Qigong are working with movement. One of my first teachers was a man named Walter, who, if you were an observer, you would just see two people sitting across from each other in a chair, and you would think nothing's happening. But in fact, what he was teaching me was energy phenomena and being able to see and feel and sense energy that was happening in another person. And that began a quest for me to starting to understand energy in the unseen world. I also, around the same time, was working with a woman who really taught me about understanding kind of this shadow self that we have, or we can call it like the egoic self that keeps us from our true internal light. There's many ways in which this ego self serve us, but there's a lot of ways in which this ego self keeps us from unconditional love. So I spent years, and I mean years, really diving deep into that and starting to understand programming and what programming was and how it keeps us in states of separation. And then I moved to France. And while in France, I had babies and started understanding more about unconditional love through being a mother, and as you both are, right? And what selflessness comes when we give so much of ourselves to our children, right? And at the same time, I was learning a new language, which is probably the most humbling thing that I've ever done. Because when you live in another country, you have to be willing to be seen as, if you don't speak the language, you have to be willing to be seen as somebody a lot less intelligent than you actually are. You know, humor is like another whole playing field, but just even comprehension and then expressing. So I was very much learning how to kind of come in to myself in another way, because I was always so very out there and very social. And by going to another country, it helped me learn to be a little quieter in a different way.
Oh.
And it was during that time that I started the dancing. And the dancing, I will say, I had left dormant for a while, even though I had it with me ever since I was a child. There was years in there with having babies that I didn't dance. And then Zumba exploded onto the world stage, first in America. And I went from France home to Pittsburgh and I took a class. And in that class, I immediately said, oh my gosh, I could teach this without question. I could teach this because it was everything that I was passionate about. I had been studying dance all throughout my life. And when I got to a big city, all of our friends were international. So I met, friends from all over South America, and I explored their dancing and I explored African dancing, and I just loved beats and tempos. And I mean, definitely an artist at heart. I didn't really realize that until later in life, but now it's just anything artistic just revs me up. So when I found out that Zumba was going to be training instructors in France, I became one of the second group of instructors that were trained in France. And I was located in the southwest of France, and I became one of the first instructors. I've always said I'm the first independent instructor. Independent meaning I was not associated with a gym. So I had to figure out a whole way and a team and put everything in place, create a nonprofit. So there was all that business-minded aspects of me. One part that Sid kind of left out is ever since I was 22 years old, I've been like a serial entrepreneur with my husband. And we're just passionate about creating. And I realized just the other day, I was saying to my husband, I have been creating ever since I can remember. I'm constantly creating. I every single day I create content for multiple platforms and have been doing it for years. So anyway, during this time in France, I started to become passionate about standing stones, menhirs, standing stones. If you don't know what those are, just think of Stonehenge. Okay.
Okay.
And I started France has many standing stones. The Celts are all throughout France. And our family decided to go on a trip, and we were going to go visit some of these standing stones. But before I tell you about that story, I want to tell you about probably one of the most significant incidences that happened for me. First of all, I had a pain on my left side. And this pain, I thought first was muscular because of all the dancing I was doing, and then it just wasn't going away. And decided to go see the doctor. The doctor had no idea, so they prescribed me to have an ultrasound. The ultrasound didn't show anything. I started praying about it. It just wasn't going away. And I decided to do some holy chanting of words. And I was doing it for 2 weeks straight. And around the end of the second week, I had what many call sleep paralysis, which I had in the past. I don't know if either of you have had that experience, but when you have sleep paralysis, it's a very fascinating thing. And I've learned later in life that sleep paralysis helps you to have some of these outer body experiences. It's almost an invitation for you to have more psychic experiences. So what happened, I haven't really talked much about this, so you guys are getting the dealio on it. But what happened is sleep paralysis, like you feel pinned down, and fear can come over you, or else something else can come over. And what came over me was like this lucid state of seeing and feeling and experiencing something that was very visual. And what happened, now this is years ago. This is years ago before concepts of like holograms were really out there. And what I experienced was, imagine just like all these layers on top of my body of shapes and gears and numbers. And it was just like things were like counter rotating, like it was all just happening above my body, but I couldn't move. I was absolutely glued to the bed. And there was sound. I think that there was like clicking. I don't really know, but it was so profound that once I was able to move again, I just fell asleep. It could have lasted 30 seconds or it could have lasted 3 hours. I really have no idea because I was coming in and out and in and out of this experience. But I will tell you, after that happened, another whole level of awakening emerged for me. And
Did that heal your leg? Did that heal the pain?
Yeah, it was gone.
Wow.
Totally gone. Absolutely gone. Never felt that pain after that in the same way. Never. So that began a series of experiences that I can only now explain as divine and otherworldly, because something was healing me. And the chant that I was doing was connecting the sun with the earth and infinity and myself. And there's been a lot of connection for me ever since that time with the sun.
What do you think, like the mechanism and the layers that you saw in front of you, like what was that? Was that like another dimension? Was that another being? You know, what's your thoughts on that? That you were, what were you connecting with? Or because usually I think when people, I don't know that I have ever experienced sleep paralysis, but I think when I have heard other people's experience of sleep paralysis and it's been a very negative experience, like there is something negative there.
Yeah, dark, something really
Yes,
dark, and something that's like holding or pinning something down. And that's where I was saying that these thought forms can either take you into the dark, or I just released into it. And now I'll tell you, at that time I had no idea, but what happened immediately after, and I went into my office, my art studio, and I started painting. And what I painted first was a picture of a bumblebee. And this opened me up to this, to the concept of geometry, which has become a big part of my story of understanding numbers and shapes and symbols. And today, what I would say happened is I think that I had a divine healing. Who that was and what that was, I still don't know. But I always feel and have felt that I'm encased in some sort of light. I've always felt that I have had a presence of light with me, in me, and around me at all times. Could we call those interdimensional beings? Yes. Could we call them guardian angels? Yes. I have, you guys will know, I have like paintings and pictures of angels and statues, all through my home. So angels have always kind of, the idea of an angel has always been around me too. But I do believe that since that happened, it awoke experiences or presences or essences that were destined to come out in me became came more forward. After that, I was doing a lot of journaling because we were
Okay,
at
I just have one question about the chant.
yeah.
Where did you find this chant? And is it something that other people can do?
Yes. Believe it or not, I actually found it on YouTube, and it was Tina Turner did this video, which you can find, of all these little children from around the world singing singing songs, religious songs. And one of the songs, I believe it was a Hindu song, and I just loved it and I mimicked it. And it had hand gestures with it. And it goes Rama da sa sa se so hum. And it's an album that she put out. She was an avid meditator, and it was a video and series as well as an album that she put out with two other women, and they were just trying to, I think, unify people a lot, that prayer has many forms and has many shapes. I have my own opinions about prayer, um, and how I won't go into that because that's like another whole tangent, but it's accessible to anybody. And it just felt really good at the time to lean against my bed and before bedtime doing these sounds. Sounds are frequency. And it also started my whole journey with frequency. And a part of my store is we do a lot of sound healing. And Reiki is all about frequency and healing with vibrational frequencies and allowing yourself just to hold space and light and help to create this balanced sensation, this polarity sensation for healing to happen.
Mm,
So yes,
interesting.
anybody can do this. And I didn't know at the time what I was actually saying. It was later that I looked up the words and what they actually meant.
And what do they mean? What did you say again? It
It
was.
it's basically the sun, the earth, infinity, in yourself, but maybe we could insert that. I can give it to you, but maybe you could insert that. And or maybe even a link in your underneath
Yeah, in
for
our
it
show notes.
to the actual video of these little girls, because it's beautifully done. I mean, they did a gorgeous job of all these little children singing these sacred songs.
Yeah. And it sounds like a lot of it is just kind of like what you're drawn to and what you're into. Like, it's not like you're following a specific script or religion or whatever. It's just you're following your own intuition and your intuitive hits for what feels good and what feels right for you.
Yes. I am somebody who loves the goodness of all religions. So there is one common thread that runs through every religion and every human, and that's love. And I don't think we need to seek much further than that. And so in my studies, so I became an avid researcher, and in my studies, I'm constantly drawn to trying to figure out where the love is in in all of these religions.
Mm.
So what happened to me thereafter? I was doing, before we moved to France, I did a book that was called The Artist's Way. And
Yes, I've heard of that, and
yes,
I wanted to start it, but I have it, but I've never done it.
well, I highly recommend it. I've done it now twice, but start it when you're ready to do it because it's a big commitment. It's every single morning doing writing pages, and
Mhm.
then there's also like homework that you have to do.
For
And
how
but
many days?
it's for like 8 weeks,
Oh,
so
wow.
it's a big
Okay.
commitment. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really big commitment, and but it's extremely profound. And the idea of it, it was written by Julia Cameron, and she used to be a writer for Miami Vice. And she created it when she was giving workshops about how to, for people who had writer's block. But as she was giving this, she started to realize that what was being cracked open was any kind of hidden artistic talent. So it wasn't just cracking people open to their hidden writing capabilities or being able to get into that flow state of writing. It was actually cracking somebody open. And what happened for me the first time that I did it before we moved to France is poetry came out, because my professional life, I was doing a lot of writing. And the first thing that came out was poetry. And the second thing that came out was art. I started painting and drawing. And then it started getting into manual things. I started making barrettes for my daughters and jewelry. And then the motherhood thing kind of kicked in. I started doing sewing for my kids and including my kids with sewing. And then we came to a big turning point in our lives. We needed to decide if we were going to stay in France or leave. I was given the book again from a friend who didn't realize that I had done it before. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of a cool coincidence. And I decided to embark on the whole entire thing again. And this was
How many years later was this?
it was
The
in
first
about
time?
14 years later. So it was a double
Okay.
7 cycle, which is really interesting for me.
Oh,
So 7
Yeah.
being a full alignment. So it came in another full alignment.
Yeah.
And
and that lines up with astrology, by the way, because Saturn takes, roughly 7 years to make a square and then 14 years to make an opposition. So it's kind of like it would have been a Saturn opposition. So that's very astrologically aligned as well.
oh, isn't that beautiful? I love it.
Yeah.
As I was doing that, we were trying to decide if we were going to move back to America and where we would move. And I did the book. This is again around the same time that I'm doing that chanting, and I had that healing. I was waking up in the middle of the night. I would go in, it was very ritualistic. In the middle of the night, I would light my camera, I would do my journaling, I would go deep into prayer. And it was a really scary period because we had already put our house up for sale, but we weren't getting any bites. And I just really put some deep prayer out to the universe at that time. Well, a couple massive things happened to me during this second period of doing the artist's way. I had 150 paintings come out of me in 6 months. So
Whoa. Wow.
I was doing 2 and 3 paintings a day. It was just, I was sketching, I was painting. It was just like, I was absolutely passionate.
Wow.
Just so much. I was looking at other artists' work. I was using their work to help to try and sketch my own version of their work. And then I was also creating my own ideas. It was a massive period of production.
Yeah. Wow.
What else happened during that period of time was during the journaling process. Let me just take you back in time. Trust me, I have a way of telling stories that spiral, but I will get back to it, okay? I
Sure.
have to go back to when I was 7 years old. Around 5, 7, I remember I made that, like, God, there has to be something more to life than this. Well, around that time, I had what now I realize were precognitive experiences. It happened over this one window of time, which I wish I could maybe calculate for you guys. That would be really interesting for you to see in my chart. But this one weekend, I had every single day, I had massive precognitions happen. One, I knew somebody was going to die, and our neighbor across the street died. 2, I knew somebody was going to break a bone. My brother broke his wrist. I just had these really scary big things happen to me.
And you were like 5 or 7? You were
7.
that young?
I was
7.
7. I was definitely at the age of reason. I crossed over that threshold of 7 to maybe 9, but I was somewhere right in there. I can't.
Wait, I have to say, can you imagine if someone was there supporting you at this age and was saying, like, let's believe in this, believe in these insights that you're getting, these intuitive downloads that you're getting? Because as a Pisces sun, and you have gate 57 in human design, the most intuitive gate in the whole chart, and these gifts, you have consistent access to your intuition. These gifts are coming forward at this young age, and unfortunately almost every single person is conditioned, that's what we call it in human design, by other people in our lives and our upbringing and society and the world, and these different gifts that we have that we're born with as a whole unique person, they're just kind of stuffed down and not brought really into fruition, and then we have to kind of remember them in our adult lives. And just imagine how different it could have been, at that time.
Oh yeah, if I had been really encouraged. I mean, I think well, Sid, my mother, your grandmother, was who was also a Pisces, was incredibly psychic. And I mean, as a young teenager, like a preteen and teen, I was sleeping with Edgar Casey books underneath my pillow, because Edgar Casey believed that you could absorb books. That's why I have books around me all over the place. So I literally was sleeping with books under me. So it's not that Mimi like squelched it out of me. I think it was more the fear squelched it out of me. But I agree with you. Today is a very different era of like parenting. You two are being young parents, of supporting this and like encouraging this exploration. But at the time it scared me and I just shut it down. I'm like,
sure.
Especially when an old person is dying and like I knew a death was around me, right?
Yeah. And I want to
very
also
scary as a child.
yeah. I also just want to say, I don't mean like she specifically,
Oh yeah,
my grandma, your mom squelched it out of you. I just mean like societal norms and like even her own conditioning as a human being, it's like, oh, okay, like,
yeah, she
let's
was
move past
terrified of
that.
it too, I think. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have so many things I want to share with you. Remind me to get back to Dolores Cannon, okay? Because that's a really important point about psychic abilities collectively in the last like 100 years, okay? But what happened during these journaling things is you have to do 3 pages, and it's like 8.5 by 11, and she doesn't care. It's just a free write. It's not about what you write. It's just about writing. And what happened to me was at some point in time, I felt this energy come in my left ear, and I felt this like weightedness, and I wasn't asleep, but I wasn't awake. And I could hear, and my hand was just writing what I could hear. Okay. And it kind of took over. And again, like I told you, I was like waking up really early. And this particular day, I finished my things, and it was this story. Didn't think much of it. I went and got my daughters ready for school, got them out of the house. But when I was getting them ready and doing their hair, and I was in the bathroom. Now, I don't know about you ladies, but bathrooms are like magical places, right? Something about the running water, and you get information. Well, I'm in the bathroom with my daughters getting them ready, and I'm like, I wonder if any of this is verifiable. Okay, because it was a story of a woman who came through. So I get them out the house, and I find out the story was about, she said her name was Myra, and told me of these things. And I started to look up, and I find out and I never studied Greek mythology, but I found out that there was the story of the Greek mythology around Mer, who also can be known as Myra. And Mer was the mother of Adonis, Adonis being the most beautiful of all the gods. Well, Myra, at some point in time, without going into all of her story, doesn't want to live or die, myrrh. So the gods turn her into a myrrh tree. A lot of this research comes later, but I find out first and foremost that like this was verifiable information that was coming through.
Mm.
And then I had like 2 or 3 others, and I didn't like the sensation of something taking over me. So clearly it was moving into some sort of channeling experience, because
Mm-hmm.
the other ones were verifiable as well without going in. There's too many stories I want to share with you without going
Mm-hmm.
to those.
Sure.
And I kind of like, yeah, you can't do this anymore. I don't want to be knocked out of the way and have something else come in. You got to find a different way to communicate with me. Okay.
Fully believe that. And I think that other people doing the artist's way and doing those morning pages have had similar experiences. And that's just really insane and very cool. But I do think you have to be aware of it. And it's nice that you had like the awareness to say, okay, no, I don't want that anymore, but let's find another way to do this, just to have that conscious awareness around that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Completely.
When you were a kid, did it feel the same way, the precognition as a child? Was it the same kind of thing coming in at this time as an adult? The information?
It's actually more similar to how I get precognition now and how it changed. So let me tell you this next part, and then it'll make a little bit more sense, hopefully. So remember I told you I was fascinated by standing stones at this time, and
Mm-hmm.
I take my family on a trip up to Karnak, and then we were going to go over and see Stonehenge. And I've got 2 little girls who are like, we're going to go see more rocks, Mom. You know, they weren't getting it. But for your listeners, whenever you go to sacred sites on the planet, it awakens things in your body. That's why our ancestors would go on pilgrimages, right? For whatever, we were told that they were going to make prayers for healing and things, but actually it's far more than just that, because our body is a vessel that can get attuned to these node points on the planet. And I would love to talk more about that, but let me go into the story. Okay. So we go to Karnak, and Karnak is an area in the northwest of France. It's where there's 100 standing stones that are beautifully aligned, that are aligned with the solstices, aligned with like they have a mystery about them. And we drive into this village, and at the village, there was a little market that was happening, like an artist market. And we walk in, and I notice this kind of weathered, small man with long hair, leathery skin. And I just looked at him, and the best way I can say it is I just knew him. And I could completely commune with him through our minds. I could just look at his eyes, and at first I'm like, okay, that was really weird. I'm just going to walk around this village and see all of the artwork. But I knew I wanted to double back, and it was towards the end of the day. I knew I wanted to double back and talk to him. And I went back, and just being in his presence was the most incredible sensation I've ever felt. And the phrase that kept going in my head was, he is me, I am he is me, and we come from the roots of a tree. And it was like my whole entire being was duplicated in this man. It was like a full imprint. I don't know how to explain it. And whenever we talked, it kind of broke it. But if I just stood there and looked at him and stared at him, it just felt so good. I don't know how to explain it more than that. And I bought one of his little pendant trinkets, and I asked him what it was, what it represented. And he said it was a mystery, which takes me on a whole other story about trying to figure out what this mystery is all about, and on this like lifetime journey of figuring out what this little pendant is. But anyway, I walked away from that experience freaked out, and my sister and her family were there, and my family was there. I'm like, I come from the root of a tree. Do you know what just happened? I just had this incredible thing. Did you see it? Did you feel it? Did you sense it? Do you have any idea what I'm talking about? Nobody had any clue. They're like, Kelly, Kelly. Okay. And I'm like, it was like one of the biggest things that ever happened to me in my life. Right.
And so what do you think that was? Like, what does your intuition say about that?
I believe we're going back to creation and God. I believe that we all come from one source, and there was an original separation. And I believe that that fractal has color associated with it. And if you take like the 7 colors that work through the body, I believe that we all identify with one of those vibrational frequencies of color. And the closer we get to an original fractal piece, the more we feel that completeness to God. That makes any sense.
Oh.
And I believe that he was one of these fractals that were in my line of fractals. And so it's like soul families coming together, right? I don't know if you've had, well, I think you two found each other, right? You guys look like one another. You sound like one another. You have the same passions and interests. Well, it's happened to me multiple times where I just look at somebody and I know them. I'm speaking to them. This was the first time that it had really happened in this way. You know, you've had precognition of like, I saw my husband and I knew if we could talk about anything, he would be the man that I would marry. Like I've had those kinds of precognitions, but where I felt like a duplication, that's only happened a few times. If that makes, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So from there explodes this whole story about trees and the roots of a tree. And we end up moving back to America, and I started studying more about Myra or Myrrh. And I moved to a town that was called Mount Lebanon. Well, by Phoenician mythology, there's Greek mythology, there's Phoenician mythology. They have a little bit of different names and things, storylines. With Phoenician mythology, Myrrh's father shoots an arrow at her belly before she dies and gets turned into this tree. Okay. She gets turned into what's called a dryad. And a dryad is, you know, you go to trees and you just feel they're vibrant and they're alive. They're very alive and they're kind of calling to you. Well, those are what in mythology they call her dryads. It's like if the tree dies, that energy of that tree will jump into another tree. Okay. There's also hamadryads, but there's dryads. So in the mythology, he shoots an arrow at her belly and she gives birth to Adonis, the most beautiful of gods. Adonis gets born and he dies in Mount Lebanon. I'm from Mount Lebanon, Pennsylvania. And he dies by the hand of a wild boar, and his blood goes red. There's the whole story of this. So I had painted my version of myrrh. And I knew that I wanted, for my first art exhibit in America, I wanted to make a triptych. And that exhibit was happening in Mount Lebanon. And it just happened to be that this was going to be a triptych. And it happened in Mount Lebanon on this story, Phoenician mythology, of the god Adonis being born and dying in Mount Lebanon, Lebanon. Anyway, so many synchronicities happened. I also ended up meeting a business partner who had a business called Roots Naturals. My business originally was called Inner Roots, and then it changed to Inner Light. So trees, roots, light all started to become very important to me. At some point in time during this journey, I hear the voice, light is changing. You have to tell people light is changing. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I can't say that. And it just was this energy that just kept pushing on me. Light is changing, light is changing. Now, at this time of doing all of this art, I started just building notebook after, I can't even tell you how many of these notebooks I have, and creating journals that are a little bit different than journals of knowledge. It's like I got cracked open, and I can't say that I've ever, if anything, I probably had ADHD growing up. I wasn't like a scholarly student until I got into college. But something happened going to these sacred sites and having these experiences that I started to have an incredible ability to contain knowledge and explains things. And it's like I became a vessel of information. And the journaling kept pushing me to say things about light. So I was studying light. I was curious about light. I was fascinated by angles of light, which you guys study in all of your work, right? For me, angles are angels, coming full circle here again. And the refraction of angles coming onto the planet is what makes us up, right? And how those angles interplay with us. And what I noticed as a kid, the sun was very different as a child. The sun was more orangey, yellowy. Now the sun is blinding white. So on certain days, it is just absolutely white. And I started noticing people who were starting to take photographs. Cameras started changing at this time too, right? We only see a very, very small spectrum of the light spectrum. And these cameras started, some people would say, oh, they're just, like reflection light. My intuition was saying, no, there's something far more at play here. It's allowing us to see a wider spectrum of things that aren't actually there. And so I just started, that things are actually there, not what we think aren't there, but they are there. So I started just putting out tons of knowledge, tons of information, and photographs that people had been taking, that I had been collecting, of seeing all of this light phenomena and this geometry that is forming in these reflective angles. And then I started finding people that were like me that were studying it. And then I had another unbelievable experience. So during this time, I had made great changes. I had moved to America. I was suffering badly from heartburn. And I was trying to find a way in which to help myself heal. So I went back to my roots of when I was studying with Walter about Qigong, but this time I began to study it formally with movement. I really wanted to get into meditation, but I realized as a dancer, stagnant meditation wasn't working for me. So moving meditation, which is what Qigong is, made more sense to me. And I completely fell in love with it. And when I started, and if for your listeners, if you don't know what Qigong is, it is the spiritual point of traditional Chinese medicine. So you have like acupuncture, acupressure, herbology is the medicinal. Then you have like Tai Chi and all the martial arts is the military or the action oriented. And then you have Qigong, which uses some of the medical and some of the movement, but topples it off with spiritual.
Mm.
So this was, again, another thing that made a lot of sense to me. And what happened after one, it helped my heartburn. And two, it helped me to understand the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. And it started to move me into the study of physics. As I was doing that, the best thing I can tell you is the first thing that happened was in this type of soft gaze that you create when you do Qigong. It's like you're seeing, but you're not seeing. You're outside of your body at the same time of being inside your body. So you start to have this capability of a soft focus where you become hyper attuned to the physical and non-physical simultaneously. And as I was evolving in my practice, I started to realize that off of my fingertips were golden threads. It's just imagine your finger extended out with the absolute perfect golden light. And depending on how, I guess I would say Zen, or how much at peace I was during my practice and how smooth the movement was and the breath flow was, the longer I could make these. Sometimes they were here, and one of the longest that I ever had was like, way, way extended.
Yeah, like a couple feet.
Yeah. And I started to journal about this. And again, this is all this time I'm having this pressure on me to research, to study, to journal, put information out there. And it wasn't information that a lot of people were interested in. And a lot of my family members and alienating myself in the process, isolating myself in the process, people begging me to spend more time with them. But all I knew is that I had to do this. It was bigger than me, far bigger than me. And it was just like a push on me that I had to obtain this knowledge and ultimately share this knowledge. Then I started, in Qigong, we have different tools that we can function with. And this is called a Qigong ruler. And it's exactly 11 inches, which is symbolic. When you hold this in your hands like this, you do movement, right? And as I started to become more proficient in working with this tool, what ended up happening with that soft focus, I started not just seeing the threads coming from my fingertips, but I started seeing light following this dowel rod, and like the most beautiful, perfect horizontal threads, like very, very fine, almost like threads of a spider web, but without the vertical, only the horizontal, right? And no matter how I moved it, it would move with me. That then started another piece of research in finding out that the Native Americans and the Hindus all had words for this. And it, the one that I use the most is called Indra's net, right? And that began my fascination with plasma. Plasma being this fifth state of matter, this invisible field of consciousness that we can obtain knowledge. Okay. It's just all around us. And the quieter we are, we're able to get information. And that's what my journals started to become. They started to become ways in which I would tap in to this plasma field. There's been a lot of different names to this: morphogenetic fields, plasma, Akashic records. Some of the other names are eluding me right now, but it became a field of knowledge. Anyway, I'll stop there before I keep going. Any questions about that?
Yeah. So I want to go back to light is changing and this feeling of like, this is this message that you have to get out. What do you wish people knew about this? And can you explain what that means for the world?
So
in your perspective.
Yeah, in my perspective is light carries consciousness, and we are at a time of a massive shift on the planet. Everybody feels it, right? There's an awakening, a spiritual awakening that's happening for everybody. And light carries information. It doesn't just, light is so elusive. It doesn't just.
As you're saying this, Kelly, I don't mean to interrupt you, but as you're saying this, there are these beautiful speckles of light that are falling on you right now. So
Yeah.
I just had to interrupt you to say that because that seemed significant.
I noticed that too.
Yeah, I'm looking out my window and there's blinds, and yeah. Well, that's what's so magnificent about light is, again, something we weren't taught, is light is an interactive force. We don't think of light as being interactive. We think of it as a constant. But I've had experiences now that I realize that it's interactive, and it's holding information that some will say is invisible information, but it holds geometry, it holds coding, it holds numbers, it holds the capability to realign our DNA, particularly what's called our junk DNA, which is really all of our intuitive aspects that have been, in my opinion, purposely shut down. And that is all starting to dial up. I believe that we are basically a soft tissue version of this.
For listeners, she's holding up the cell phone.
Oh yeah, for listeners, I'm holding up a phone. So I believe that the human body is a soft version of a telephone, of a receiver. And the more that we put some of these aspects of us into alignment, because we live in a binary system, that's what Qigong is all about. It's about aligning the yin and the yang, right? The positive and the negative. The positive meaning the electric, the negative meaning the magnetic. Everything in our bodies, our bones are piezoelectric. Piezoelectric is just a complicated word for saying that it has the capability, the capacity to align the positive and the negative charge, just like a battery. That's why crystals, if any of your listeners are working with crystals, particularly quartz crystals, are used in computer chips and are used in watches, is because this can be programmed. Okay, it is a amplifier of energy. And in the same way, I mean, we actually have quartz crystals, we have magnetite in our brains. This is what we have found out. And through a process of learning how to compress and become centripetal, which is like a type of deep focus, we can start to create that alignment that is important in order to get into the pineal gland through the pituitary gland, which is the female gland, would be the pituitary, which is another reason why women in your age that are having babies, you're all about creating. Women in my age who have already gone through the whole process, this is ancient knowledge again, have gone through the process of menopause. What that allows us in the Crohn's stage is that we are about creating consciousness, right? There's so much wisdom that comes with that. The focus in the physical body doesn't have to get used for creating life, but it gets used for creating consciousness. There's actually hormones that get created for this. Again, I won't go into that, but I digress.
Fascinating.
I feel like we could do a
Love
whole
that.
episode on that.
Yes, I digress.
that.
Like I told you, I go down a lot of tangents, but there is a common theme through all of this. And that is that our bodies are piezoelectric. Every cell has this binary code. Our bones have it. When we create this alignment, and here I brought another little tool to show you. This is a child's toy. And I have used this to prove my point. One, that we are all connected, and two, that we are living batteries. So this is just a toy, right? And if I put just one hand on the top,
What is it exactly?
It's called the energy rod. Okay.
Okay.
And
It's an energy rod.
it has two polarities, just like a battery does.
Okay.
If I put my hand on one of these, nothing happens. But if I create the full circuit, you're going to see what's going to happen. As soon as I close my hand, I open.
So for listeners, Kelly's putting her one hand on each end of this rod, and when she does it, there you can see the electric and the lights kind of move through it.
Sound,
it stops.
Yes, the sound happens and the light happens. Okay. So I've taken this into different lectures and group settings. And if I hold one hand and I say, hold your hand, Chanel, and then you hold Sydney's hand, and Sydney's hand holds another person, and we make a full circuit, that very last person that comes into the circuit and closes on, doesn't matter if you have 100 people or you have 3 people. If you have 2 people, you are creating a circuit. We are all connected.
Beautiful.
Is that magnificent?
Yeah.
So again, light is bringing this information to us, but we are all deeply connected to the sun and the light that's coming through the sun. I don't believe at all that the sun is what we were taught when we were growing up. To me, the sun is a portal. It is a interdimensional portal that is bringing in information from the sidereal time. People say that differently, but from the central galactic sun. And so that light that's coming through, that's why I think that we are changing as a species. I could keep going, but I'll open it up to questions. So
wow. Okay. I mean, that's like very interesting. When you said like light is something that's interactive, it's not a constant, like that is a very new concept for me, but very, very interesting.
So light, again, not being a constant, light is actually flickering on and off. And it happens almost like a strobe light. And we actually are living 15 seconds in the past all the time. It's how the brain actually smooths over what is actually happening, because we can't, it's like it makes that jump for us. Like we have to
Mhm.
live 15 seconds in the past because it would be too chaotic for our brain. So I do want to talk about something about synchronicity, because I'm sure a lot of your listeners are experiencing synchronicity, because if they're already, you guys deal with the macro, right? You guys are out there with the planets and you're using archetypes in order to help a person understand more of the physical 3D body, the how we function in this world, right? Well, what I have been studying with a group of my followers and students is how synchronicity works and what it's trying to speak to us and tell us. And what I believe is it's the way in which the universe is trying to talk to us, because the universe doesn't, it can talk to us in words, but a lot of times it talks to us in pictures, and it talks to us in shapes and numbers and forms. And when we start to trust the synchronicities more and more, I believe that that's when we start to dial up some of our precognition and telepathic capabilities. I think that synchronicity is like a stepping stone to help us in this new vibration to start to become trustworthy of these God-given gifts that all of us have, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And they come
Mhm.
up as the clairs, clairaudient, clairsentient, clairvoyant, clairolfactant, like all these different clairs, precognition,
Mhm.
telepathy.
Mhm. Wow. Yeah. I I resonate with that for sure. 100%.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So do you have some stories to tell us about synchronicities? Is that where you were going with this?
Mm, I have a lot of stories. I have a lot of stories that my notebooks are full of, and some of them, you know, people might not even believe, but I think that without like going into them, I think that the most important part is that everybody has them, and that they're there for you to help you trust the divine and to help you give praise, acknowledgement, and appreciation to this divine energy that runs through every sentient being on the planet, from plants to grass to like everything has this running through.
Mhm. It's funny. I think I recently have noticed a lot of precognition for myself. Like I will think of someone random, someone I haven't seen in years, and I'll bump into them like at the store or at that happened to me recently where I was thinking of someone that I used to work with years ago. I walk into my son's preschool and she's standing right there. Why am I thinking about this person? You know? Or it even happens to me recently with like different phrases, which is weird. But like, when you hear like a certain phrase and you're like, oh, I've never heard that phrase before. Or I haven't heard that phrase in a long time. But then all of a sudden you see it, everyone starts saying it around you. Does that
Yes.
happen to you guys?
Oh gosh, yes, it becomes
Yeah.
part of like the collective consciousness, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can go into the science about that a little bit. How are we able to achieve this information? Is because we kind of live in a soup, for better plasma, we'll just call it plasma. We live in a soup, and this soup has pictures in it that we literally are. We've got our spirit, and we also have our soul. Okay, and
What's the difference?
um, for me, your soul is eternal. Your soul is the most eternal, perfect expression of you and your absolute connection to God. However, the spirit is more of kind of like who you are right here, right now. That's an essence of your soul, but it's kind of it's kind of like what's being worked out and worked on. One of my curiosities is how are we, I believe in past lives and I believe in reincarnation. And I believe that there's a way in which we can save our knowledge through death. And as you learn new things, it's almost as if you feel like you're remembering as opposed to learning something new. That's why I feel like all of this like push of me trying to understand, like I avoided physics. Like I didn't even take physics in high school because I'm like, I don't know. And now I'm so fascinated by physics. And I realized that probably in a past life, I was very mathematical and physics oriented. There's probably, it's a little bit around my Chiron, I think, is some of this knowledge information. But pictures are in people's field. And you're able, the spirit Chanel is, traveling when you are, even you're thinking about something else, or you're in the zone, like with water, you're washing dishes and
We're driving.
you're driving, you don't have heavy thoughts. This is what the Zen thing is all about. When you have heavy thoughts, you're very anchored into the 3D world. You're very anchored into the physical body. When you're able to alleviate that, it's when the kind of the spirit kicks in, and it does what it does is it just goes out into the soup, into the plasma, and it can hook on to some of these pictures and it brings it back in. And it gives you the picture of the friend because it's traveling through time and space. Remember, we're working with a phi proportion of time. We're not looking at time as being linear. Okay.
Right.
So it is able to hook onto that, bring it in to give you the knowledge. But this is why quieting the mind is so important to become this interdimensional being. We're all interdimensional beings. We're all jumping through time and space constantly. Okay. This 3D, 4D, 5D. I mean, we're all over the spectrum. We're even far, far beyond that, especially when we sleep. But bringing it into the consciousness is a very, very different conversation, right? Because once we're able to bring it into the consciousness and we're able to hook onto those pictures, then we're able to really anchor it into the 3D so that we can start to work with these dimensions a lot better than it just kind of being somewhere in the subconscious, right? We bring it up to the conscious forefront.
Yeah.
It's how Reiki is able to, like, some Reiki practitioners feel it in their hands and some Reiki practitioners get pictures. I'm not one that feels it in my hands. I just go and let my body hold the light vibration, hold the balance, but I get pictures. And those pictures, I'll talk to the person and I'll say, like, what happened to you at blah, 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 or why am I seeing this fish in your, does this mean anything to you? And sure enough, it's because it's in the soup around us. It's like alphabet soup, as a kid, like you're searching for all the A's or, the C's or whatever. It's around us. These pictures are around us. And
that makes sense.
Yeah, the beautiful pictures are there and the dark pictures are there, right? And the dark pictures are just wounds that haven't been healed yet.
Yeah.
It's just where there's lacking of light and lacking of love, and there's fear.
Yeah. Wow. Well, this was so beyond interesting. I mean, we could sit here and talk for another 3 hours, I think.
Yeah.
But
Wait, one quick reminder to bring it back to Dolores Cannon.
Thank you. So Dolores Cannon talked about these waves that of consciousness that were purposely designed to come onto the planet at this time to start to awaken humanity. And I believe my mother, your grandmother, Sydney, was one of the people of the first wave, where they held light codes and they held knowledge and they held some of these psychic abilities and were a presence on the planet, but they did not want to be here. I mean, they chose to come, but the vibration was so dense and so thick, they really didn't want to be here. And they had a very hard time kind of functioning on the. Do you get chills on that one?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
just describes her. Like, I almost feel her right now. Yeah, it just describes her energy to a T.
Right? Right?
Yeah.
And then there is the wave, the next wave, which I feel that I'm 50, I just turned 58. And I am fascinated because some of my students are, like 18, 19, 20. And the things, and you guys, you're in your 30s, right? The things that you guys work through so much faster is astounding to me. I mean, we can have a conversation and it's like you get it. Whereas my wave of consciousness that came in was like a turtle, slow and steady, go into the jungle, hack away, just hack away, hack away, hack away, just breaking up the twigs, breaking up the big, deep roots, and trying to make a path so that there is a walking path. Every generation after me has been trampling on that path and making that path make more sense. And the languaging over time has also changed so that, things that I might have called one thing back when I was in my 20s, you guys are calling something else. What took me maybe 3, 5, 10 years to get clarity on, because that path has been walked so many times, you guys are like not having to stumble through all the thick of it to get the clarity that is needed in order to get there. My wave has just been constantly just cutting through things to make this passage easier for these generations that's coming. And like your kids, like the stuff, I mean, there's never been so many children. What's it called when a child is like super proficient in like a language or speaking or spiritual knowledge or can play an instrument,
like
like
savant.
a savant. Thank you. There's so many savants on the planet, and if you've watched any of the telepathy tapes, there's all these kids that are coming on that are fully telepathic. I mean, there's schools now where kids can, are fully blindfolded and can read anything. There are so many people that are doing remote viewing now, lucid dreaming, out of body experiences. I mean, there's so many more things that we could talk about, but it's because what Dolores Cannon was saying is that there have very specifically been an intention from our souls, from our higher selves, to incarnate onto the planet to make these waves come through. So honoring our ancestors, which a lot of cultures do, is so important because of who they were to our families, but also what energy they were holding and also what limitations they were holding. Because through their limitations, it gives us a guiding path of what not only needs to heal within ourselves, but what ancestral healing we have to do too.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because there's a lineage there, right? That lineage tells a story through time and space for ourselves, but also the whole line. But each generation that's coming in, and there's always that, few people, the molds in the family that are just like, no, this doesn't make sense anymore. I'm not doing it that way. I don't
Mm-hmm.
see it like that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, for sure.
that's a very difficult place to be in, because you make not enemies, but going against the stream requires more force and more energy to go against the stream.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Not going with the current, but against the current.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to bring that
Incredible.
up because that just kind of came in recently, Sid, and I think that's tells us a little bit more about our lineage.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating. Well, is there anything else you want to leave our listeners with? Or one other thing, I guess, is just if somebody's interested in starting out with energy work or, getting into spirituality in some way, where should they start?
I believe that there's a way in for everybody, and that's part of why I created my store. Some people are going to find a natural inclination towards stones and crystals, another person through sound and music, another person through astrology. Like, you guys say things in astrology, and I love it. And as many times as I've tried, it's not my domain, right? And I don't. It's like, I don't know why. I love archetypes, but for some reason that's not my domain. But yet my domain is, through sacred geometry and numbers and shapes. Like, that fascinates me. Science fascinates me. Physics fascinates me. So there's a way in, and just if you don't know what your way in is, you can journal. That's another way in. Think back to who you were as a child, and what did you love to do as a child? Was it just sitting outside and playing in nature? Maybe forest bathing is your way in, starting to connect to the ethereal realm through nature. That might be your way in. So learning more about who you were as a kid helps you know who you are now, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
And asking God, asking source, whatever that makes sense to you, and learning how to listen. And that might be another whole conversation we can have, is like, how does information come in, and how do you trust that, and how do you listen to that? And
Yeah. Your Instagram at Kelly Brown Inc. INK. Is there anywhere else that people can find you and your work and your art?
my art is Kelly Brown Inc. as well as my website. And those are the two probably most, the place that is the most up to speed is Kelly Brown Inc. on Instagram. And every single day, for years, I've been working with a group. It was private for a long time, and now I've kind of made it more public. I do what's called God Day instead of Good Day, God Day, instead of saying good morning, because um, especially the English language holds knowledge. And I like to say God Day, just to, one, recognize that there's an essence of God in paying homage to God every single day. But I put a story up every single day, which is about light and love. And people can follow me on story or on my actual feed. Yeah.
Beautiful. I
Yeah.
love that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming
Yeah.
on and
Thank you
sharing
for
a little
giving
bit
me
about
the
your
opportunity.
research.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'm very grateful for the two of you, for what you've created, and how you've visually also brought it to people in such a beautiful way.
Well, thank you so much, Kelly. This was really wonderful. It gave me a lot to think about and a lot to look into. So I look forward to hearing more from you about it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, ladies. Have a beautiful day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you all for listening.